Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. A shock result in the VCT Challengers playoffs last night with G2 going down to Oxygen Esports despite beating them in the online league match portion of their stage. They've lost to them when it mattered most, dropping straight down to the losers bracket in a very disappointing showing from G2. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, from Zekan here, stealing and selling to the highest bidder, the Shrouds, Sentinels jersey. Definitely a high price tag associated with this one. Now, the VCT Pacific begins tomorrow. So Pacific is starting now. I believe the Americas one starts, I think, on the 1st of April, around about that point. So it's rather soon where finally we're going to actually get some real matches for these professional teams in play. Yes, we had the lock-in event, but some of those teams played one series and went home. So it's Zeta versus Direct, it's T1 versus Global Esports. Those are the first games to be played just tomorrow. Also, a quick update on the CS2 situation. Mimi, one of the most popular female players, has said that she's definitely going to stay in VALORANT, and I understand this certainly from the Game Changers perspective. I do feel like, the way that it's supported from Game Changers here in VALORANT makes a lot more sense than the way it is in Counter-Strike, or just makes a lot more sense for players to actually stick around. So many are going to stay in VALORANT, and I do think that, some players are, I'm going back to CS2, all this stuff. The reality is, I think not that many actually will. Some might try, some might fail, maybe it'll work out for some of them. And Nismo actually says here from M80, message to tier 2, 3, 4 or 5 VALORANT players, a lot of people talking about switching back to CS2. Trust me, if you didn't make it in VALORANT, chances are you will most likely not make it in CS. I'm not trying to bash any players, but from experience, making it in CS is much harder, especially if you are not in Europe, which I think is probably a fair point as well. The amount of salaried organizations over there in CSGO, or well, how it will be CS2 going forwards, and it might be different, right? More organizations might return, but I think there's a very good reason why a lot of the North American player base moved over to VALORANT was because NACS was in the mud. There really wasn't any organization supporting it anymore. Many orgs were coming into VALORANT, so actually making it in VALORANT to a team that could actually pay you some money was a lot more achievable than it was in Counter-Strike at the time, and going back to CS is probably counterproductive for many, and of course a lot of those players tried to make it in CS before, didn't really work. They came to VALORANT and either they've made it or they haven't yet. Going back to CS is maybe not the way to go. Players will try, but I think Nismo has a fair point here, and more than likely many of the players especially in the North American scene, won't make the return unless CS2, which it might well do, picks up an awful lot of traction, and especially in the North American Counter-Strike scene, and all of a sudden we get more organizations involved, because Vanity made the point here, in I think what he's talking really is the North American scene, 17 full-time salaried orgs versus just 3. So I think in the Americas in general, there's many organizations that will actually pay salaries in VALORANT and pay big salaries of that, whereas NACS was in the mud, and many players couldn't even get signed to a proper organization over there, so it made a lot more sense to stay in VALORANT in the short term, and it might well do in the near future as well. In Europe might be a different story, but I think Nismo makes a fair point here, and M80 of course, they're frying in the server in VALORANT right now, so I'm going to trust Nismo that he knows what he's talking about on this one. Also, this very strange and interesting update from the VCT Americas partnering with Heineken Zero as a map sponsor for Icebox. So I'm guessing that what they want, Heineken, is, Icebox, cool beer, this type of stuff. Of course, it's zero alcohol beer, but this is the way that Heineken do it, right? Because they get their brand associated with Formula 1 and other brands by associating them with the Zero brand. But then, of course, if you see Heineken branded, you might not necessarily think about the zero alcohol version that they're offering. But I'm guessing they want to partner with Icebox as a particular map sponsor because, ice cold beer, this type of stuff, right? I guess it makes sense in that way. They want that relationship. But so it's really interesting. So for all Icebox maps for the VCT Americas, there will be Heineken 00 sponsorship during map select, gameplay, and throughout the broadcast itself. But to bring in a sponsorship for a specific map is a very interesting phenomena, right? Because will this happen going forwards? And what does it mean for, let's say the pros hate Icebox? Some teams like it, some teams certainly don't like it, and it may be one of those maps in the medium term that requires another rework or might need to leave the pool. But all of a sudden, if they've got this big sponsorship with Heineken for every time that Icebox is played, then they're incentivized to ensure Heineken Icebox remains in the map pool, and also that they don't remove it, and that the pro teams start to like it a bit more so that they actually play it more often. It's quite interesting, right, that a specific map should be getting, what might end up being preferential treatment here by Riot Games based on this partnership. Maybe they can come up with something similar for other maps as well. Maybe this is a step as well, because once you start to get the the alcohol sponsorships coming in, okay, Heineken Zero, not alcohol sponsorship, but you know what they're really trying to go for here. The possibility of gambling sponsorships down the line as well. We saw the other day that Riot had said that they haven't changed their policy on gambling sponsors and they're not coming in now, but with this partnership, you can't rule out the possibility in the near future, especially given how the lack of profitability in esports in general, that might be a phenomenon that comes around relatively soon. But I would never expected to see a map specific sponsor like this, and I guess we'll see how it goes when the Americas begins in around about a week or so's time. Ye also says, I got nothing left but ranked, so here's a 1 versus 5, which is pretty sad stuff in a way. Nothing left but ranked is quite the statement really from Ye, because I mean, look, obviously he's gone from Cloud9, don't exactly know what his future is going to be as a player, whether he's going to take a break or what the situation is. I did theorize, right, whether maybe he's still getting paid something from the organization Cloud9 just as some sort of package when they terminated his deal, but I don't know. But we really know nothing about Ye. He hasn't been streaming. We haven't really got any details from him on exactly what he's planning to do, but still not exactly an ideal turn of events. Let's talk then about the VCT Challengers face-off that was going down last night. 2 big games and 2 massive results. FaZe put up a solid fight against the Guards. FaZe, theoretically, as an organization with the pedigree they have, they should be better than this team is. Feel bad for babybay, really. Like, this guy has been carrying hard for a long time and just doesn't really get any results. Poise, I don't know what this 3-piece was, an absolute mess here on Lotus, but whatever. FaZe did pretty well. They took the Guard to the distance. They lost map 1, they lost map 2. Both of these games were close though, and as he says, we lost to the Guard, but we showed improvements. Really proud of us playing semi up to our potential, so hopefully FaZe can continue to be more competitive, and they've got a big series coming up tomorrow up against, I believe, G2 we'll see in the first round of losers. Very spicy stuff indeed. Definitely looking forward to that one. Trent, though, came different when it mattered. GG's, he says, 2-0 in the end it was. So the Guard taking them down. Definitely, you could argue they're the favourites for this tournament. They ended up being the top seed over in that Group B. They beat M80 in the matchup they played online. Okay, this is online as well, but still, this is a real tournament type setting now. Trent came good when it mattered. Ascent was 13-9. Lotus ended up 13-11 in the Guard's favour. FaZe were super close to getting there. They almost closed the gap, but it wasn't quite enough at the end. They could have taken it to overtime, but, obviously the Guard just the better team at the moment. The other, though, probably more interesting series for me was G2 versus Oxygen. This was a matchup that had occurred in their group because for some reason the way their groups made it happen here for the face-off tournament was so weird in a way. Like, they played G2 with the first seed from that group, Oxygen with the 3rd seed, and yet they play round 1. It's like, well, surely that should not be the matchup they play, but whatever. G2 can't really complain. They were playing up against Oxygen, a team they'd beaten before and would be expected to beat again. But I will say Oxygen have rather impressed me over the last few weeks. They did seem to be taking steps in the right direction and improving match by match they played. They won map 1 here against G2. G2 then bounced back on the split and took that to a decider, and then the decider on Lotus, we see a lot of Lotus lately, went in Oxygen's favour in the end. Was super closely fought. Verno had some great moments here, was taking down the guys on G2. The series got closer though because, there were some clutch plays being made. Somehow G2 managed to clutch up here in this basically 2v5 situation almost. dapr goes big and Verno doesn't get the defuse. So that seemed like potentially a turning point in the series, but it wasn't to be, with G2 eventually going down. And as Mitch says, it won 2-1 versus G2. We go again tomorrow versus the Guards. A great result for Oxygen, and that means they progress all the way through to top 6 at least, and they're looking good to potentially secure some big points here in terms of making sure they get through to the playoffs at the end of the season. And that was a big result for sure. And Oxy, he had a bad series by his standards, and it's interesting, right, because just the other day we mentioned the fact that ShahZaM was saying that, oh yeah, Oxy is the future of Valorant, this guy's unbelievably good, was gutting him up super hard, and then yeah, the first series they play, he has a shocker. Not like Oxy's a bad player or anything, but it's just, if you're relying on Oxy too much, which maybe they are, then when Oxy has a bad series, which will happen at some point, then, they have a hard time, which is certainly what happened here. So even as dapr says, embarrassing, should be an A, but whatever, I'll forgive him. Gameplay from us, 1-2 versus Oxygen, got 5 days to get better. So actually, yeah, this is true. So the games they play in losers aren't happening immediately. There's like a massive break for some reason before they play those games. We'll see in a second here, but they do have a lot of time to prepare for FaZe, which is also kind of interesting because when you play these games, you know who you're playing, therefore you have a lot of time to prepare, and G2 will do that for FaZe. But yeah, they've got to come back stronger. Pretty shocking performance, honestly, from G2, all things considered. Whippy, dapr, they did quite well. ShahZaM was actually going big on the Omen, but Oxy just had a bad series, and that was enough to go their way. Now, Pony and Verno, gotta give massive credit to these guys because Verno had a big series, but Pony was 20-7 in First Bloods and was certainly duelist diffying Oxy in this series. Yeah, 20 first kills, 7 first deaths, massive result for them. 13-8 on Haven, then it went back 13-5 on Split, was pretty comfortable. Looked like G2 had taken the initiative, but Lotus 13-8 back in their favor in the end, and yeah, big result. ShahZaM was trying his best, but the rest of the team wasn't really at the races. So that leaves the bracket looking like this. M80 versus Moist Moguls today, as it is the Guard versus Oxygen. I'm expecting, of course, an M80 versus the Guard upper finals to be happening in a few days' time, but we'll see. Maybe Oxygen could put off another upset, maybe Moist Moguls can pull off an absolute miracle against M80, and then in a few days' time, we then get the Disguised TSM Phase G2 losers bracket games that are going to be massive as well. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.